we've finally come to the moment. We've been waiting for this moment since the middle of Vayigash, since the sale of Yosef. And that is the reunion of Yosef and Yaakov. Many people think the high point is when Yosef reveals himself to his brothers, but I always think they're the ones who sold him. It was Yaakov who suffered for the 22 years, and now after all that time, Yaakov and Yosef are about to meet. And the pasuk says, "Vaye'esar Yosef merkavto, vaya'al likrat Yisrael aviv Goshna, vayera elav, vayipol al tzavarav, vayefk al tzavarav od." It's a beautiful, dramatic, emotional moment, and there's crying. The only question is, it's not clear in the pasuk who's crying. Vayefk al tzavarav od. One cried on the shoulder of the other more. And there's a famous machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban, about who is the crier in this pasuk. Let's start with the Ramban. The Ramban focuses on the word Vayefk al tzavarav od. He cried on his shoulder more. Well, what does it mean to cry more? It means you had to have cried already. And in fact, as the Ramban points out, the Torah tells us in a number of places, Yaakov cried over his missing son Yosef. So if Vayefk al tzavarav od is somebody cried more, it's pretty likely that the crier in this pasuk is Yaakov. That's the Ramban's grammatical insight. But then he has a classic Ramban psychological insight in which he says, look, if you had a choice between the 30-something-year-old premier of Egypt or the 100-and-something-year-old father, who's more likely to cry? He says the father is much more likely to cry. The father loves his son more. The father was more broken by the distance between them. It's Yaakov who cried. Fine, that's the Ramban. Now we look back at Rashi. Rashi says od is an adverb. Lashon harbot b'chiyah. Yosef is crying, and he's crying an unusual amount. It's really, it's b'chiyah od. It's more than usual, and we can understand why. So Rashi identifies Yosef as the crier. But then comes the strange and really frightening medrash that Rashi quotes. Aval Yaakov lo nafal al tzavarei Yosef v'lo nishako. V'amru rabotenu shahaya korei kriyat shema. Wow. After 22 years, the moment comes and Yaakov doesn't cry at all? How is that possible? And he doesn't cry at all because he's saying kriyat shema? What's going on here? So Rav Lichtenstein said, we are simply not allowed to understand Rashi is saying that Yaakov didn't experience emotion, that Yaakov had reached some madrega in which he had walled off his emotions. Rav Lichtenstein thought that that wasn't a compliment to Yaakov. He thought Yaakov clearly felt deeply, and that the Avos felt deeply, and that they were human beings. They were human beings on a level above us, but they felt human emotion, and they felt deeply, and it's inconceivable that Yaakov Avinu didn't feel deeply. And yet, somehow, he overcame his emotion in order to say Kriyat Shema at that moment. Fine. Rav Lichtenstein did not answer the question, but why did Yaakov Avinu choose to say Kriyat Shema at exactly that moment? And here, I think Pshat in the Medrash is as follows. The moment that Yaakov saw Yosef, everything became clear to him. The need, maybe the guilt that he felt having sent Yosef to visit his brothers, he understood immediately that this was the Bris Bein Absarim, that this was the beginning of the exile of the Jewish people. But on the plus side, he understood that literally his 12 sons were to become Bnei Yisrael. In that moment of overwhelming gratitude and overwhelming emotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yaakov Avinu said Shema. He was Mekabel Ol Malchus Shamayim, not from a distance and not intellectually, but from the depth of 22 years of sadness over Yosef. All that joy, all the gratefulness, all that understanding poured out in that statement of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Shabbat Shalom.